Welcome to ARC 313, Advanced Delineation in Watercolor for Architects. This is video number 2. We just heard about materials that you need to procure, and now we're going to go over the syllabus. If you're getting these videos, it means you're in the class. I'm taking everybody off the wait list, and also the independent study students among you. So we're a group of about 40 students, and we're going to have a great time painting this quarter. This is a 4-unit class, and I always start off with this quote from Winston Churchill. Without tradition, art is a flock of sheep without a shepherd. Without innovation, it's a corpse. And so what I mean by that, and why I start off the course with this quote from Winston Churchill is, number one, he appreciated art, but I really want to stress that I've taught this class for about 15 years now, and I've really had to change the way I teach it because of advancements in other forms of representation, i.e. digital representation. So, I take a traditional approach to this, but I also, want you to know that this is something that is still relevant today, and we just use it in different ways. We use watercolor in ways that we can't use the computer, and we use the computer in ways we can't use watercolor. And by no means am I a troglodyte about that. You can use digital media in this course. You can do a watercolor, you can scan it, you can take it into Photoshop, modify it, you can bring in other entourage. So you can do mixed media in this course using both watercolor as a medium and taking it into digital media. But the objectives for this course are to develop a proficiency in architectural presentation using the medium of watercolor. So everything that we do has to have some element of watercolor in it. So sometimes we'll be sketching and watercoloring over that. Sometimes you might just watercolor paint directly onto the page without any guidelines. Sometimes you're going to be taking it into digital media afterwards. So it's really up to you, which is the next line here. The course is all about you. So after the first half of the quarter, we're going to be able to start working on our design project in the medium of watercolor. So you'll take, I'm assuming every one of you has a design studio this quarter. If you don't, then email me and we'll talk about what other things you could do. But for the most part, people are taking this class in conjunction with a design studio, and so their subject matter for the second half of the course is really the design project that you have going in your other class. And depending on the amenability of your professor in that design studio, you can use your final renderings from this class in your final presentation for that class. This is also about the application of methods and means pertaining to the creation of two-dimensional visual organizations to communicate intended concepts and meanings of students' corresponding design projects. We want to reinforce and extend design, drawing, and visual communication skills acquired in the previous years of design. We want to develop exemplary graphic skills in the production of sketchbooks. We want to reinforce the notion of directed discovery. You'll unearth your design project as you explore it in watercolor. And we want to encourage the interface between digital and analog techniques, as I mentioned earlier in this video, to arrive at final work product that meets with your needs as well as mine. There are no books required in this course. Here are some recommended books that you might procure if you can find them. Some of these are pretty hard to find. The first one is Cercare Venezia, Immagini di Neil Watson. So this one will become useful to you when we do the Neil Watson method, which is lesson number 2. It's Cercare Venezia means in search of Venice in Italian, and it's a great book of Neil Watson's watercolors of Venice. George O'Keeffe works on paper. Most people don't realize that George O'Keeffe was an amazing watercolorist as well as an opaque media painter. So we know her mostly for her oils of flowers, but she did some amazing abstract watercolors at the first part of her career. And that book, Works on Paper, features those prominently. Pierre Chareau, designer and architect. Pierre Chareau might possibly be the the architect of the best project you may never see in your lifetime, the Maison de Verre in Paris. It's very hard to get in. If you ever can get in, I totally recommend it. Pierre Chareau was the designer of that. He lived in the house, did watercolor paintings of the designs as the contractors built it around him. And that book is a great document of all of that. Stephen Hall, Written in Water. Stephen Hall was an exemplary watercolorist, and we'll talk about Stephen Hall quite a bit over the course of this quarter. Written in Water is a book that he did at the size of his sketchbooks and printed on a paper that was modeled to feel like watercolor paper. So it's almost like looking at a thick sketchbook of his, and it's just all of his watercolors. He's famous for doing watercolors every day, so there's no shortage of stuff to look at from Stephen Hall. And there's actually quite a few books you can get of Stephen Hall that all feature watercolors. Let's see, Rob Creer on architecture. Rob Creer was a German architect who did a lot of great work in watercolor. Paul Klee was an artist, a Swiss artist who worked primarily in Germany throughout his life. There is a museum in Bern strictly devoted to his work. He taught at the Bauhaus. He taught architects how to paint in watercolor. And the Gerasi collection from the SF MoMA is a great collection of his work. Egon Schiele, Art et Dossier. Egon Schiele was a painter, mostly a figurative artist, but he did a lot of great watercolors. He was from Austria, at the same time as the secessionist movement there, started by Otto Wagner. Aldo Rossi, The Sketchbooks, is a great book that features Aldo Rossi's sketches in watercolor. Graham Reynolds wrote A Concise History of Watercolors, and Zumthor, Spirit of Nature Wood, Architecture Award 2006. It's a book all about his own homes that he did up in Leis, above Vals, that were done completely in wood, and he did all the representation in watercolor. Materials required. So we went over materials in the first video, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview. You're going to need paints, brushes, watercolor paper, sketchbook, jars, paper towels. But what I do want to say is, if you thought you might want to do the tube method where you buy all your own colors, I do give you a list of good colors to choose from. And if you want to just get the minimum, you can get some nice primaries like alizarin crimson, which acts as your red primary, Indian yellow, that acts as your yellow, French ultramarine, which acts as your blue, and then Payne's gray can allow you to adjust value up and down from 0 to 10. If you want to go further with that, Winsor Newton has a great Hooker's green, Prussian blue, Purple Lake, Payne's gray again, burnt sienna, raw umber, yellow ochre, and burnt umber. These are great colors to purchase in a tube that you can put in your own palette. Again, brushes, either Kolinsky sable or nylon or a combination thereof. Try and get something in the 8 to 12 range, maybe 6 if it's a large 6, 12 if it's a small 12. 8 to 10 is probably your best bet. Watercolor paper, we talked about cold press. You could also get hot press, which is a smoother paper that it allows you to sketch easier, but things dry quicker, so it's a different feel with the watercolor. But I like hot press too. The only thing I don't recommend is getting the rough, because the rough is, as the name suggests, and it's hard to sketch over. Yeah, jars and paper towels. So that's the list of materials. There's a whole bunch of additional materials in the syllabus that I assume you already have. Things like rolling parallel rulers, pencils and pens, erasers, cutting boards, X-Acto knives, that sort of thing. But go ahead and review that list and maybe pick up something if you don't have it in your arsenal. The methodology, my methodology promotes the concept of discovery. This watercolor studio is not run as an office where you're told exactly what to do and then dutifully do it. There are no preconceived solutions. The projects are left purposely custom and individualized to encourage exploration and discovery, to bolster your intuition, enhance creativity, and influence you to ideate. I'll endeavor to expose you to beneficial influences and ideas and techniques. However, success ultimately rests in your own exploration and perspiration, as well as your ability to support your solutions with action. For grading, we'll have 5 projects, weekly projects. I'll give you on Tuesday. They're due the following Tuesday. And those are all worth 10% each. You're going to keep a watercolor sketchbook, and we'll do a sketch of the day every week, plus whatever other sketches you do on your own. That's worth 20% of your grade. And then the watercolor renderings that you do for your design studio project, your final, are worth 30% of your grade. So that's the bulk of it, is those final renderings that you do for your project in Design Studio. And those are due the week after finals, the week after Dead Week, so the week of finals week. So in that regard, if you are really crunched for time on Design Studio and you need to continue working on your watercolors for the Design Studio project, you have another week after that to really bolster your portfolio of watercolors. So office hours, we're working online this quarter, and so I'm available anytime by appointment. So if you email me, we can set up a time that works for both of us, and we can Zoom together, or we can have an email chat. I do give you my cell phone number and my email address, so you can text me or email me. The expectations, so we're going to work in an asynchronous manner and a synchronous manner on this course, but mostly working in an asynchronous manner on your own time. So you'll come in, grab my videos on Tuesday, practice the techniques, do the assignment, and get back to me on Thursday if you have any questions during the Zoom meeting from 9 to 11. That's the only time that we have synchronous learning on in this class. So a lot of these things, try and encourage your fellow students, through sharing your work to each other and get critiques. You don't have to only get critiques from me. You can send it to each other and help each other out, because I think rising waters raises all boats. So rising tides raises all boats. So if we're all in this together, myself included, we'll all come out with some great watercolors at the end of the quarter. So the most important thing I think for you to remember is this quarter, since we're working online, is you have to claim your education. We say it wrong, I think, here. We say, I'm here to receive an education. And I think that sort of suggests that you're sitting back and just sort of absorbing it all like a sponge. But really, in addition to being a sponge, you want to be a hypodermic needle, and you want to go out there and claim your education. So watercolor is no different than anything else. Some people are going to just take to it right away. Other people are going to have to struggle with it a little bit longer. But the more you struggle with it, the longer you put the effort in, the better the results in the long run. It's a little bit frustrating in the beginning. I'm not gonna lie. Watercolor takes a little bit of getting used to. It takes a little bit of relinquishment of control that you're used to from other media. But once you are willing to sort of allow mistakes to happen and allow for serendipity and spontaneity to happen, you'll find some great results in your work. So I'm looking forward to working with you, and thank you for following along on the syllabus. I'll email this to you directly too, so you have a copy of it, and we'll get started next week. Talk to you later. Bye.